Well, my name's Kevin Goodwin. I'm a family comedian, and I say family comedians because in today's time you turn on the TV or you turn on the radio and you have children that you have to turn it off because of the language or the material that the comedian uses. And my material's all G-rated. I mean, I would never be embarrassed for my own children to listen to it. They come to several of my shows. I have 3 children, and my children are, when my youngest one was 5 years old, he's 100% boy. I mean, by the time he turned 5, we've already been at the doctor's office with a broken leg. We've been to the ER for staples. I've had the police knock on the door at 7 a.m. Because on a Saturday morning, because he was throwing rocks at the car in his underwear out by the street. Well, when he was in preschool, he had a little girlfriend, and he liked this little girl. Always talked about her. They was always playing together, and was at Walmart one night. And he said, "Daddy, I want to buy her a ring." So we went over to the little kids' jewelry section. I paid a couple dollars and bought a little ring, and he was all excited, and I gave it to him. And I said, "Well, Joshua," I said, "there's your ring." I said, "You can give it to her tomorrow at school." Well, he got home from school, and I said, "Joshua, did you give her the ring?" He said, "No, Daddy, she's just not ready for a ring yet." I said, "Okay." So next day I said, "Did you give her the ring?" He said, "No, Daddy, she's just not ready yet. She don't want the ring yet, I can tell." I said, "Okay." Well, being 5 years old, and as any 5-year-old, he had an accident at school about a week later. He carried this ring in his pocket for a solid week. Every day he carried it to school. And he had the accident. We're riding home, and at that time, at that particular daycare, instead of them washing the clothes after a child had an accident, they put them in a Ziploc freezer bag. So, and they don't clean nothing up. I mean, if you poop in your pants, you have poop in the bag. Whatever you got in the bag, you got is just in the bag, and the parents have to clean it up, which is very nice because then you get to smell it after it's been sitting there all day long. We're coming home that day, and he holds up this Ziploc freezer bag to me. He says, "Look, Dad," he says, there's her ring right here in the bottom in my poop." And I just kind of shook my head, and I said, "Well, Joshua, we'll go back to Walmart tonight. We'll get her a new ring." He said, "No." Said, "We'll clean this ring up." And I said, "No." I said, "We're not going to clean this ring up. We're just going to get her a new one. You don't want to give her a ring that's been in your poop." Well, that's at the point that he told me, I said, "Daddy, look, I've already spent enough money on her, so I'm not buying her another ring. We'll just clean this up and not tell her." Smart 5-year-old. I've been in the funeral business for about 20 years. I started working in the funeral business when I was 16 years old, part-time. And a lot of my material comes from the funeral home. I truly believe, and I've seen over the years, that laughter is truly the best medicine. And that I've seen laughter help people with grief. It doesn't take away their grief, but it just helps them bear the grief and get them through the next day. When I first started in the funeral business, I was 16 years old. And I worked for a funeral home, and I wanted to do everything just perfect. The manager told me, said, "Well, why don't you go back to the funeral home and move the lady from the parlor over to the chapel?" And I said, "That'd be fine." So I went and I asked the family, I said, "Would y'all please step out into the lobby and while I move your mom over?" And I noticed that when at the 11 o'clock service, when I was there, that when they went to lower the casket down, or lower the lid of the casket down, that they took a crank and they cranked the casket. And the body actually went down a little bit inside the casket, and they closed it. So I went in, and after the family stepped out of the parlor to move her over to the chapel, and I went to close the lid, and as soon as I started pulling the lid down, all of a sudden I heard "doom." I thought, "Oh Lord." So I opened the casket up a little bit, and I looked, and I knocked the lady's glasses off. And they fell down to about where her mouth is. thought, well, I've got to move this lady down. So I found one of those cranks, and I put the crank down in the casket, and I started cranking it down at the foot end of the casket first, and I just kept on cranking it down. Before I knew it, I had the casket, like the inside of the casket like this. The lady slid off of the Pella and down into the casket. So I thought, well, now I've got to get this lady up on the Pella before I can move her over. Here I was, 16 years old, weighed about 150 pounds, skinny, hardly no strength, couldn't pull her up. I thought, well, how can I get her up? So I closed the lid of the casket, the foot end, and I got a chair, and I put it up next to the casket. And then I climbed up on top of the casket to kind of straddle the casket. And when I started straddling the casket, I thought, well, if I could get underneath her and pull her up to the pillow, then maybe I could get my body strength good enough to be able to do that. So when I got up on top of the casket, I'm straddling the casket, and I'm reaching underneath her, and I went to pull her up, and about the time I reached underneath her, my manager came back from that first service and walked in, and the only thing I heard was, "Kevin," and I fell face first on top of the dead lady. My goal is to share that laughter helps us. You know, I read statistics one time that the average preschooler laughs or smiles 400 times per day. That number changes by the time they reach the age of 35 to only 15 times per day. And why is that? It's because we are so much as an adult stuck in the norm of everyday life. We have the same routines every day. We probably get up at the same time. We probably eat about the same thing for breakfast. A lot of us has to drink coffee before we can even get going or have a shower. You know, our normal day life stays the same, and we forget about laughter. And you know, so much bad news. If you turn on the news today, you hear so much bad things that's happening in the world, whether if it's the economy or what's happening overseas or just here at home in America, that we need laughter and a time to laugh. We had this family that came in years ago at the funeral home, and I met with them, and the gentleman was burying his father, and his son, he wasn't real bright. He was about three fries short of a Happy Meal. And he asked his dad in the arrangement conference, he said, "Daddy, I want to buy Pawpaw his suit to be buried in." And his dad said, "Well, that'd be fine." Said, "I was planning on putting your grandfather in his overalls. That's what he always wore, and he was a farmer. So, but if you want to get him a suit, here's my credit card. Go buy him a suit." Well, later on that afternoon, the grandson brought the suit in, and he had in a real nice bag, and he brought it in to me, and he said, "Well, if you'll go ahead and put this on my pawpaw, and then when we come in and for the visitation, for he'll look real nice." And I said, okay. So I didn't look at the suit at that time, and when it got time to dress the body, I went in and unzipped the bag, and it was a tuxedo. I thought, well, that's odd that he has a tuxedo. Maybe he just went and bought the tuxedo. Maybe that's what his grandfather always wanted to wear. So we put the body out during the visitation, and the family was talking about how nice he looked, that they've never seen him in a tuxedo. About 3 weeks later, the son came back in for a visitation, and he said, "You remember that nice suit that you buried my daddy in?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Do you know that I've been getting a charge on my credit card bill every week for that suit?" And I said, "Do what?" And he said, "Yeah, I've had to pay him about $900. And I said, $900 for that suit? He said, "Yeah." I said, "My son," said, "you know, he's not real bright," so he takes after his mama. And he went up to the tuxedo place and rented the tuxedo for his pawpaw to be buried in. Thank you for taking your time out of today to look at my DVD. That means a lot. And for booking information, please go to my website at kevingoodwincomedian.com. and you can contact me through there.